evening. Good evening. Good evening. We are so excited for you to join us on our Tiger Talk session tonight. As you have come into the room, we are elated that you are here. We hope that tonight you take notes as we have one of the strongest individuals that leads in our division and our department at Morehouse College in the Office of Financial Aid with us tonight. Our topic tonight is Financial Aid 101, understanding the new FAFSA. So I'll introduce myself and we'll go from there. My name is Michael Gum. I serve as the Director of Admissions for Morehouse College, proud member of the class of 2010. So yes, I fortunately graduated from the best college in the world. So Doc, I'm not gonna belabor it too much, but I will say there's something special about this place known as Morehouse College. But I'm elated. I'm excited that the OSMCA division has asked and requested that we would have an individual who understands financial aid very well, who's a proud member and graduate of an HBCU himself, as well as has now worked in a capacity where he's received his doctoral degree from the illustrious Clark Atlanta University and finding himself now in the capacity of being at Morehouse College. So Dr. Primus, I'm going to turn over to you to introduce yourself before we go into the history of Morehouse and Morehouse College.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. Definitely to the Morehouse community, definitely thank you all so much. My name is Dr. Lamario Primus. I am elated to share information with you all, just not only about the FAFSA, but just about financial aid overall. In my years of working in financial aid, either as an advisor or as well as the director capacity, I think it's very important to not only share information, but then come from a space of understanding. And so again, I definitely appreciate this opportunity to pass along information, but then also have the opportunity to hear from you all and to provide clarifying answers to clarifying questions that you all may have so that we can make this 24-25 FAFSA process and experience a great one. So I'll pass it back to you, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Yes, we are happy to have you all. As you think about financial aid, we hope that you as an admitted student, you as a prospective student, desires a space and a place that's going to cater to the idea or the ideology of Black male excellence. Our mission at Morehouse College is to develop men with disciplined minds who will lead lives of leadership and service. Morehouse has been around for over 150 years, serving the capacity of educating preachers and teachers, later to find itself being able to now offer 33 majors over a course of 4 divisions. So there's so much to embark in with this college. It being a part of the Atlanta University Consortium, also known as the AUC, there's opportunities to engage not only with Morehouse, but with Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University, Morris Brown College, Morehouse School of Medicine. But there is something special about going to Morehouse in that you find yourself just striving to be a leader while also getting your education. And so that's a little bit about Morehouse as we move forward. So this session tonight is focused primarily on the FAFSA, also known as the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And with this session, there's topics that you want to make sure you're writing down. We are bringing our Associate VP of Financial Aid to you. So do not take this moment lightly. Allow this opportunity to take notes, to hear what Dr. Primus has to say. And these are the covered topics tonight that you want to focus, and I say, Doc, laser focus on as they get this information, okay? So the first one is, when does the FAFSA become available? Second, key changes to the FAFSA. Contributors request to complete the FAFSA. I've submitted my FAFSA, but what's next, right? That's a pivotal question that you all have. Types of loan options, and then what is satisfactory academic progress, also familiar or known as SAP, right? And so at this time, at this point, Dr. Primus, I'm happy to turn these reins over to you as you enlighten our community with the changes, with the things we need to be prepared for as we take the next step into that FAFSA component.
All right, so let's get into the 2024, 2025 FAFSA. So a lot of you guys are asking, when does the 24-25 FAFSA become available? So for those parents who may have guided their children through college previously and have, helped them with the FAFSA, historically, the FAFSA would be open October 1st of each year. However, you guys have probably heard from the Department of Education and some of the publications that Morehouse Colleges put out to all of our campus constituents. The Department of Education is doing what we call a complete revamp and what we call the FAFSA simplification. This revamp or the FAFSA simplification has been passed through Congress, which means that there's just a complete overhaul of the requirements, of the eligibility requirements, as well as the application experience. And so with that being said, they were able to push back the FAFSA application to be available for what the Department of Education labeled as a soft launch effective December 31st, 2023. So when that soft launch became available, some of you all may have, if you've been following the federal student aid program via social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, there was some slight glitches with that soft launch, meaning that some parents and students may have been able to start the actual FAFSA application, but not be able to finish, and the site will probably glitch out due to site maintenance. I would highly encourage you all, for those who have experienced that, to make sure that you all remain diligent and just reassessing your application, not only to just get it completed as soon as possible, but to just make sure that it went through successfully. Again, this is a complete overhaul from what has been done in the past, and the Department of Education has been putting out publications and communications to all colleges just to make sure that students know that this is not something that is being experienced just on Morehouse's front, but just all colleges across the country. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys were available. I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that the soft launch is available for 24-25, but if you all experience some form of a glitch in terms of system maintenance, not being able to move forward with the application, the site may time out. Just remain diligent as the Department of Education is working through all of these kinks to make sure that they roll this out to all students in a more effective manner. So now we'll talk about some of the key changes to the free application for federal student aid. Some of the major changes would include the FSA ID. So in the past, students and parents were required to create what we call a FSA ID. The FSA ID was used more as a username and password for solidifying or submitting the FAFSA. Whereas now that change included where users without a social security number can create an FSA ID to access the FAFSA form. In the past, families would be required to have a social security number. So this is a really good change because not every student or not every parent has an active social security number due to immigrants and things of that nature. So we wanted to make sure that we provided that information, that is no longer a requirement to complete a FSA ID to complete the FAFSA. Would be a roles-based FAFSA form. So in the past, families would typically sit down to complete the FAFSA together. This is the Department of Education kind of split this role and responsibility. It's split now between the parent and the student. So now completing the FAFSA, the student will complete their part, and then the student will actually request for the parent to log in using their own FSA ID to complete their specific part, and then the student will submit the FAFSA, which is a little bit different of an experience from what's been done in the past. It's been done more in a collective way, but now it's more of a roles base between the student and the parent. The third change would be what we call a contributor. So that term has been coined by the Department of Education for other parents, students of spouses, as well as a student. In the past, students and parents, that was just really the sole definition when completing the FAFSA. Whereas now they've changed a little bit of that verbiage because you have students that have different circumstances and situations, so they may have different spouses or same-sex spouses. So we wanted to really change that terminology to be in alignment so that the FAFSA can be completed accurately. So let's talk about a little bit. Well, let's talk a little bit about the contributors' request to complete the FAFSA. So in the past, again, I told you guys that the FAFSA was completed more in a collective format, whereas now it's going to be shifted into more of roles between the student and then the parent or other parent using the contributor role. I wanted to show you all just kind of really what the initial free application for federal student aid site looked like. Here you'll be able to see what that snapshot looks like. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because now the 24-25 FAFSA has a new look and feel. It's totally new. It's totally different from what's been completed in the past. And then also I wanted to show you all what this looks like in terms of knowing that this is the correct application to fill out. In my experience as being a financial aid administrator, I really noticed that parents or students will be completing incorrect FAFSAs. Students will go to FAFSA.com, different FAFSA websites, and it encouraged students to actually pay to submit their FAFSA. So I would encourage you guys to make sure that when you're completing the FAFSA, the correct FAFSA, that you're going to studentaid.gov. Any site that requires for you all to pay to complete a FAFSA is not the correct site. So I wanted to make sure that you all are aware of what this new look and feel site, what that looks like, as well as being aware that studentaid.gov is the correct landing page to complete the FAFSA. So these are also snapshots of just when you're completing the FAFSA, what the actual invitation looks like for students to invite parents to complete the FAFSA form. Remember what I said previously, is moving from more of a collective experience to more of a role-based. So the parents or the students will complete their part. Then when they go to the invite parents to submit or complete the financial information, the student will put in the parent and or spousal information. Within those required fields, they will be required to put in their email address. And then once they click continue, they will automatically be sent an invite for the parent and or spouse to receive an email to log in using their established FSA ID to complete their specific part of the FAFSA. Once that specific part of the FAFSA is completed, the student will receive a notification and then they will go ahead and complete the remaining sections to submit the FAFSA. So this is just more of a timeline or more of a step-by-step process, if you will, for completing the FAFSA. The first step, of course, is to log into your current FAFSA by going to studentaid.gov. For the students who have filed taxes and or parents who file taxes, now will be the opportunity for granting the consent to use what the Department of Education has labeled as a direct data exchange. The direct data exchange is the opportunity for the parents and or the students to transfer their tax information directly from the IRS into the FAFSA. Why is this important? This is extremely important because number one, we want to make sure that the information that you are provided on your or submitted on your tax information is imported into the FAFSA, and that minimizes being selected for what the Department of Education calls selected for verification. I'll go through that a little bit more in depth later on, but then it also minimizes the risk of providing incorrect financial information, which can minimize the amount of financial aid that students may be able to receive. Step number two, your answers on the FAFSA will determine which, if any, contributors need to be identified. So making sure that when you guys are going through the FAFSA, make sure that you all are answering these questions to the best of your ability, because the FAFSA has started to incorporate what they call skip logic, and that really determines whose information is going to be required, what information is needed, what financial aid information is going to be used to determine eligibility moving forward. And then step number three, Contributors must consent and provide the required information, then electronically sign their respective section for their FAFSA to be completed. That's a key part. Whereas in the past, parents didn't need to provide consent, whereas now parents are going to be required to provide consent to provide that information. It's a little bit different. And one of the reasons why the Department of Education put this in place is really to make sure that there's no fraudulent information or no fraudulent reporting going on from the students. We want to make sure that the parents are authorizing all information that's being provided on the FAFSA. Now, also keep in mind, there's a caveat to this. Parents, if you are consenting, it is a requirement to consent. However, there's also an option to not consent for financial information to be imported onto the FAFSA. What happens if I do not consent as a parent? If you do not consent as a parent, then by Department of Education's requirements, students will no longer be eligible for any financial aid. That is a really big, that is please write this down, please make note. And I know that that may not seem as 100% fair on the student's side, but from a parent perspective, we want to make sure that you all know that and what the ramifications are in the event that you decline the consent to provide the required information to complete the FAFSA. Step number 4. Sure.
Doc, can you say that part one more time for these families?
Sure. Yep. I want to say it again. Yep.
Yeah,
I want
one more
to say it
time.
again. So for the parents, the new requirement is that parents or contributors, if you will, must consent and provide the required information. The required information may mean marital status, may mean financial information, tax information, all of that to be imported into the FAFSA. So they do have an option to decline to consent to provide that information. In the event that parents decline, the student becomes ineligible for federal student aid. That is a big one. So please take note, parents. I'm sure that there will be questions behind that. However, we will move forward with step number 4. The IRS will share federal tax information within the FAFSA. That information will be automatically transferred over if the parent consents. And then number 5, check with your contributors to make sure that they have completed their portion and then complete all of the remaining FAFSA sections to submit. That is where I was talking about earlier. The student completes their portion. The student sends the request to the parent. The parent logs in, either consent to submit or transfer information, or they don't. But in the event that they do, the parent would go back, the student would go back in, complete the FAFSA, and then submit it. After submission, the student and the parent have the option to review the FAFSA submission summary for ongoing updates and make corrections if necessary. So these are some really key steps to completing the FAFSA, and then what the ramifications are, again, if parents do not consent to transfer or provide financial information on the student's FAFSA. So I've submitted my FAFSA. What's next? Which is the golden question. So from a historical perspective, in the past, after students would complete the FAFSA, it typically takes about 3 to 5 business days for Morehouse College to receive the financial aid application. That is in the past. So for 24-25, which is this upcoming academic year cycle, the Department of Education has kind of pushed back the 3 to 5 business day window. Why is that? Because again, they're doing a complete overhaul of the complete financial aid process. So now colleges, and this is just not Morehouse, this is every college around the country, Morehouse College would not be able to import or bring in any FAFSA applications until sometime in February 2024. Again, although we are requiring or we are highly suggesting that students go ahead and submit the FAFSA, we're asking for you guys to please not hold us to receiving these ICERs or these FAFSAs, if you will, in a very short period of time. The Department of Education won't be releasing them to any colleges again until I would probably say early to mid-February. So again, in the past, it would be a 3 to 5 day window, but then moving forward for 24-25 with this new FAFSA simplification rollout, we're looking at more so mid-February before we would start communicating with all students that have completed the FAFSA about what those next steps are. Okay. So for the Department of Education, in terms of verification, once we receive the FAFSA, the Department of Education randomly selects a population of students to submit what we call verification documents. These verification documents may range from tax information, verifying household income and size, high school diploma information, a full gamut of information. However, not every student is selected for verification. Again, this is a Department of Education random selection. So when we import these students' FAFSA, we'll then know who's selected for verification and then begin the communication process to engage the students via their Morehouse email regarding what the next steps are, how to submit and review any outstanding documents, and then it would be on the responsibility of the student to upload that information for review by the financial aid office. Once all these documents have been reviewed, the goal is to make sure that the information that's provided on the FAFSA matches what's been submitted to the Office of Financial Aid for verification purposes. One of the key things that I want to take note here for you all is if you all transfer the tax information directly from the IRS onto the FAFSA, this minimizes the risk of you being selected for verification because the Department of Education is trusting that the information that's being presented using the IRS is accurate. So the Department of Education using the IRS as a source of accurate information, as opposed to the Office of Financial Aid having to request documents from the families, then possibly making corrections to those FAFSAs, and then that slows down the actual financial aid awarding process. So I would highly encourage you all to transfer that information so that we can minimize the risk of being selected for verification so that we can get the students awarded as quickly and as accurately as possible. And so with that, in terms of the verification, if the student is selected for verification, we do use a electronic agency called KIA, which is the Kentucky Higher Education Authority or Education Authority. And that is where we would communicate to the students to say, hey, click this link. You all can create an account to actually scan and upload documents. We no longer take physical paper documents in the Office of Financial Aid. And so we want to make sure that students will be able to scan, upload, and submit documents from the confines or the comforts of their cell phones at any point in time to make sure that they're moving the process along in that manner. So after all of these documents have been submitted and there's no corrections that need to be made, then we move forward to the financial aid award. That is where the students will be notified, congratulations, you've been awarded X amount of dollars from financial aid. Financial aid includes Pell Grant, if eligible, subsidized, unsubsidized loans, Parent Plus loans, and subsidized loans. Yep, I said subsidized, as well as Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, as well as Federal Work Study. Those are all of the programs that Morehouse College participates in from the federal standpoint. We also participate in what we call private loans. That is something that the parent and or the family would be responsible for applying, and then the college would certify those loans. That would be through a outside credit check from the outside agency. But just from a what's next, that is from a holistic standpoint of what happens after the FAFSA is submitted and what to expect. Okay, so we're talked about, hey, I received my financial aid award. I don't have any scholarships, but I'm interested in applying for scholarships. Well, this is it. Morehouse College has institutional scholarships that are available for all of our students. So once students have been accepted into the college, students have the option of going to morehouse.academicworks.com. This is the one sole singular application for students to submit which is what we call a general scholarship application. This general scholarship application, once submitted, would be able to auto match students to all of the available scholarships that we have here at Morehouse. And so students may be, once they submit the general scholarship application, they may be auto matched to 50 different scholarships. And so once they're auto matched, students will receive some type of communication just saying, hey, you've been auto matched. There may be additional requirements for the student to submit just to make sure that they are actually eligible. Now, please mind you, just because you're auto matched to 50 scholarships doesn't mean that you're going to be selected for 50 scholarships. This just means that you meet the minimum criteria to be reviewed for eligibility for scholarships. And then the committee, we have an internal committee that reviews those and ranks and rates those based upon, GPA requirements, community service, and these are actually rated and ranked based upon the individual scholarships, i.e. the donor agreements that the college has with the institution. So that's how we review those, and then students will be ranked based upon who meets those qualifications and criteria, and then they will be selected. Those students that are selected will be communicated as well, saying, hey, congratulations, I've been accepted for this particular scholarship for this dollar amount. And then we'll go into what the requirements are to keep the scholarship. So we'll move into the requirements for continued eligibility on the next slide. So some of the requirements to keep the scholarship that students receive is to complete a free application for federal student aid to maximize the available scholarships and complete student verification with KIA if necessary. Completing a FAFSA is one of the key components to resuming or keeping your scholarship. Number two, maintaining your GPA, community service hours, or other conditions necessary for the scholarship. This is very important. I run into this on a regular basis. It's very important for the student to be very aware of the requirements for each individual scholarship that they receive through the college. Why is that important? Because there may be one scholarship that requires for them to maintain a 2.5 GPA, but it may be another scholarship that they received for a higher dollar amount that requires for them to maintain a 3.7. If you don't know that, or if you're not aware of that, then the automatic assumption is going to be, well, I did good for this year or this semester. Why did I lose my scholarship? That is why I think it's important for students to really know where they need to be to maintain these scholarships. Community service hours. Some scholarships require a certain number of community service hours, and those community service hours have to be documented by a specific date each semester. And so the Office of Institutional Advancement works with all of the community service related scholarship recipients to make sure that they are uploading, make sure they know how to upload, and making sure that they know the required number of credit hours or community service hours, my apologies, necessary to keep the scholarship. And then lastly, Morehouse offers general scholarships, which are open to all students, and restricted scholarships for those within a specific or specific major or field of study. This is what we really call departmental scholarships. So whatever your major is, I would highly encourage for you guys to really touch bases with your professors because they do sometimes have funding based upon the program of study that you're in. So I would highly encourage that, as well as funds are available within the specific departments. And so now we'll move into the different types of loans. And so for loans, so I want to put this out, and I know that, loans are loans, meaning that loans, unlike grants or scholarships, they are borrowed money that must be repaid, plus interest. So I tell parents, I tell students about student loans. It may be in a student-specific situation that loans are necessary. However, I would highly encourage from a student perspective that if you are having to take out student loans to pursue your education, take out only what you need, because what will happen is you will end up accruing a large amount of student loan debt that after 6 months after you either stop attending or graduate, you go into what we call repayment. And that means you'll get this nice letter in the mail saying, hey, you have X amount of dollars in student loans. Here's the accrued interest, and here's what your required monthly repayment amount will be. So let's borrow responsibly when you talk about what are my options for repayment and if loans are a necessity for covering the cost of education. So now we'll go into just what are the different types of loans that we participate in. We participate in subsidized loans. Subsidized loans are loans that the Department of Education covers the interest accrued on those loans while you're in school. We also have unsubsidized loans where the student will be responsible for the accrued interest while you're in school. And then we also have the Parent Plus loans, which are loans that are for the undergraduate student, but they are in the parent's name. In addition to that, in order to be eligible for a Parent Plus loan, a loan must be offered to parents for dependent students only. So if the student is an independent student, you're not eligible for a Parent Plus loan. This particular loan program is only available for dependent students. And then we also participate in private loans. And so this is a private loan for education through a private lender, such as credit unions or your banks. This goes through credit checks. And if it's approved, the repayment, those obligations will be through that particular bank or credit union. And so I want to take an opportunity here to just go through a little bit about these student loans from a subsidized and unsubsidized perspective for dependent and independent students. Here's the maximum that a student can receive based upon freshman, sophomore, junior, senior classification. I want to pause here for about 10 seconds to give you all an opportunity to either take pictures or really just take in this information, because these are the maximum amounts that students can receive per year. And what I mean by per year, this means fall and spring. So please take an opportunity to review these amounts. I'll give you all about 10 seconds. Okay, so we'll move right along. All right, so let's go a little bit more in depth about Parent Plus loans. Parent Plus loans are direct plus loans for parents, are unsubsidized loans made to parents of dependent undergraduate students. So that is, again, what I was stating previously, is that if a student has been deemed an independent student, then the parents wouldn't be eligible to apply for a Parent Plus loan on behalf of the students. And so one of the things that we oftentimes see is parents make the attempt to apply through studentaid.gov, but then we receive the actual Parent Plus loan application, but then we won't be able to process that because on the FAFSA at the initial application phase, the student selected a question or answered a question that deemed them an independent student. So what happens in that case? That means that the college won't be able to process that Parent Plus loan. A parent can apply, but then if they're not eligible, the college won't be able to apply that application or apply those eligible funds to the student account. So for all Parent Plus loan borrowers for the dependent students, how do I apply? First, students, it must be the student's biological or adoptive parent that should be eligible to apply. Parents will go to studentaid.gov to complete the Parent Plus loan application. This Parent Plus loan application goes through a credit check. If that credit check has been was successful, then they will prompt the parent to complete what they call a Parent Plus loan master promissory note. And so if Again, if that Parent Plus loan application or that credit check was denied, we will then receive that denial confirmation, and then the student the student would be eligible for additional unsubsidized loans. However, again, I've seen a lot of parents too, they would try to bypass the Parent Plus loan application and then request just the additional unsubsidized for the student. Can't do that. In order to receive the additional unsubsidized loans, the Parent Plus loan has to be denied first. That is a very key component that I've seen parents attempt to do. So I think that it's very important, number one, to know that the Parent Plus loan is available for parents of dependent students. And that I also make note for the parents as well. Please look at the student's statement in terms of what the tuition and fees are, how much is being applied, because for the same reasons for the subsidized and unsub, you only want to borrow what you need. And the only way you know how much you actually are applying for is if you're looking to meet the cost of tuition in its full, or are you looking to meet the cost of tuition plus housing, plus any outstanding fees that may come along with your students' cost for attending Morehouse. So I will really encourage you all to log into Banner Web, become very intimate with his Tiger Pay to ensure that you all know not only what's available, but knowing what you need. That's important, because within your Parent Plus application, you may be available for the maximum, which is, that varies. You can have 50,000, but within your Tiger Pay, you only need 30 or 35. So from a fiscal responsibility perspective, you have the option of saying the amount of what you want to borrow if it's less than the maximum within the Parent Plus loan application. So now let's talk about satisfactory academic progress. So we've talked a little bit about the FAFSA process. We've talked about, I've completed my FAFSA, what's next. We talked about some, loan eligibility criteria. All of those things, in addition to scholarships, are how you receive financial aid. Well, satisfactory academic progress is really tied to what the student needs to do in order to maintain eligibility. And if these standards are not met, students can lose financial aid eligibility, and this includes scholarships. So for satisfactory academic progress, i.e. SAP, the Department of Education mandates that students maintain a minimum level of academic performance to remain eligible for financial aid. So that means at the end of every semester, the Office of Financial Aid conducts what we call an end of term satisfactory academic progress review. And within that review, we look at these three criteria. Number one would be the GPA. Students must maintain a minimum cumulative GPA ranging between a 1.8 to 2.0, depending on their year in college. Students, freshmen, have the opportunity to have a 1.8 GPA or higher during their freshman year, meaning that, hey, I'm a freshman. So if I have a 1.7 at the end of my freshman year or freshman first semester, if I have a 1.7, that means that I didn't meet my 1.8 minimum GPA requirement. That following semester, I go into what we call financial aid warning. That means that during my warning semester, I'm still eligible for financial aid, but at the end of my warning semester, I need to have a minimum of a 1.8 GPA or higher. What happens if I fall below that 1.8 during my or at the end of my warning term? That means I go into what we call financial aid suspension. That means that we're no longer eligible for financial aid, but we have the option to submit a financial aid SAP appeal. That means that, students have the option to appeal, meaning they can submit documents to support what we call mitigating circumstances. And so that goes to a committee. The committee reviews that to determine if they will approve the student's appeal on a probationary basis. So that's the freshman population, 1.8 or higher. The sophomore, junior, senior population, they don't have the 1.8 flexibility. It is a 2.0 or higher. So again, if I'm a sophomore and at the end of my sophomore first semester, I have a 1.9 GPA. That means that I'm not meeting the cumulative GPA requirement. I'll go into what we call a warning semester. At the end of my warning semester, again, if I am not meeting that minimum 2.0, I go into a suspension status. And then I will go into the option to submit an appeal. And so this is just the GPA range from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So let's make sure that we're very aware of these GPA minimum requirements. These are cumulative GPA requirements, not just semester GPA. I have a lot of students and parents to say, all right, well, my son did really well. He had a, 2.9 at the end of this semester. But his cumulative GPA, which means all of the courses that he's taken since he's been here at Morehouse, doesn't meet this minimum requirement. So let's make sure that we are aware of the differences between the semester GPA and a cumulative GPA. Those things are different. PACE, the second criteria is PACE, maintaining a course completion rate of at least 67%. This is very important for students to make sure that we're very aware of. I give this example. If a student is registered in 4 courses, they pass 2, they withdraw from 1, and they fail 1. That means that the student did not pass at least 67% of all of their courses. Withdrawals negatively impact the student. Failed courses does not give the student any credit. That means that if they haven't passed 67%, they go into a warning term. And then during that warning semester, if they don't pass cumulatively 67% of all of the courses that they've taken, they go into what we call financial aid suspension. Same consequence flow as the GPA. It's just now we're talking about the importance of failing courses and withdrawing from courses. The reason being is making sure that you are aware that the number of courses that you withdraw from negatively impacts your financial aid eligibility drastically. And then it also prolongs the time period in which you graduate. Morehouse's goal is to make sure that students graduate in 4 years. If we see that you are withdrawing from courses and failing courses, that means that you're prolonging your 4-year time here at Morehouse. And if you have loans, you're increasing the amount of student loan debt that you can possibly go into because you're extending the time in your academic program. And then the last criteria is maximum time frame. Undergraduates have a maximum total of 180 attempted credit hours to earn a degree. And so this is very important. This kind of ties into the PACE because I think for most academic programs here at Morehouse College, it is a minimum of 120 credit hours to complete a degree. So what that means is students should not be attempting 180 credit hours if the minimum number to complete a undergraduate degree is 120. So that means that once you start to get to this 180 range, financial aid goes automatically into suspension. That means that you've been, we love you, but you've been in school too long. And so that means you go into suspension, and we need to really figure out how close are you to graduating and what the financial aid office can do to help you get over the hump. So these are the 3 criteria in which students can either maintain financial aid or lose their eligibility if they don't meet these requirements. So now we'll move into our Q&A. Push it back to you, Mike.
Man, when I say thorough, man, that was excellent. That was excellent. All right, so Doc, what we want to look at, the first question to you is, do I have to complete the FAFSA, right? And what happens if I don't? So the first question is, do I have to complete it? And then if I don't complete it, is that a problem? What's the issue?
So from a regulatory perspective, we are not requiring, it is not a requirement from a regulatory standpoint for Morehouse College to require students to complete the FAFSA. It is not a requirement. However, in order to maximize all of the available funding, either whether it be through the Department of Education, whether it be through Morehouse institutional scholarships, I would highly suggest that the FAFSA be completed. Some parents feel that, hey, I know I'm not going to be eligible. What's the purpose of completing the FAFSA? The purpose of completing the FAFSA is if you don't complete it, you're going to cut yourself out on some of the many different institutional scholarships that may be available for the students.
And that's a huge one, right? Because you're missing out on money, and that FAFSA requirement is not required, but you don't want to miss out on the money, man. So
don't miss out.
Don't miss out. Tell them. If parents do not consent to provide the information, because you talked about the consent. Good question here. Will the student be ineligible for financial aid? Can they get a loan? So again, I'll repeat it for you. Sure. If parents do not consent to provide the information, because you talked about that consent, will the student be ineligible for financial aid?
Student is ineligible.
Meaning, will they be able to receive financial aid if the student?
No. So to provide, again, to provide clarification, if the parent does not consent to provide information on the FAFSA, the student becomes ineligible for financial aid. Financial aid includes subsidized, unsub, parent plus loans, the full federal aid gamut. The only thing that the student may be eligible for would be the private education loans, which would be through credit unions, banks, all of the third-party education loan services, but no federal student aid programs.
It's good to know. All right. If my parents are divorced, whose tax information should they use?
So in the past, and that's a tricky one because I would say that will be a case by case. Because the Department of Education and it really depends on the state. So for that particular question, I would say we would use that as a case by case because it really depends on who provides the support, who the student is living with, who makes the most in terms of financial and what's being reported on the taxes. All of that plays a vital role in who to use on the FAFSA based upon those skip logic questions that's provided on the FAFSA. But it is a case by case because not everybody's situation. Correct.
Yeah. That's important. What entails financial aid? Scholarships, grants, etc. All which determined by the FAFSA. So the question is, what entails financial aid?
So what's entailed by the FAFSA is your Pell Grant, your subsidized loans, your unsubsidized loans, your supplemental education opportunity grant, your federal work study loan, your federal work study grant, as well as parent plus loans. So those are the programs that really are managed, if you will, by the FAFSA in terms of determining eligibility. If you don't complete the FAFSA, you would not be reviewed for eligibility for any of those programs or eligible funding.
Yeah, this is really key information. I hope you all are writing this down because this is phenomenal and it's great that this is recorded. If you have a student who was admitted early decision, what happens if after the FAFSA has been applied and the student their family cannot afford the difference in cost versus what was awarded? And I can kind of help with that too, but I'll let you start.
I know where we're going. So in those situations, I think that those are case by case again. And so what Morehouse College has really attempted to do is we do have some what we call gap funding. That means funding that we have available to assist students in closing the tuition and fee gap. What does that mean? That means that after all financial aid has been applied, that means that students have applied for students have their FAFSA, Pell Grant has been applied, student has accepted their subsidized and unsubsidized loans, parent may have applied for a parent plus loan and it was denied. We put on unsub loans and the student still has a gap. That is where if funding is available, Morehouse has been able to assist those families with closing the gap. And so again, I want to just make sure that we're all clear on what gap funding is really closing the gap. Not necessarily saying that my child doesn't want to incur student loan debt. That is saying that after all opportunities or all resources have been exhausted, here's where we are, and what can Morehouse College do to assist to ensure that the student matriculates financially.
And that's on the first come, first serve basis.
That is on a first come, first serve basis based upon available funding.
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's huge. So there's gap funding, you all. Okay.
Correct.
Do you have to acknowledge your acceptance and pay the $600 fee before applying for Morehouse scholarships? And so to answer that question as part of admissions, and Dr. Primus, I know this is your wheelhouse as well. You do not, right? So what we want you to do is to, still work the process, right? Still apply with your financial aid as you can, but adhere to the communications that admissions is doing so that you can stay on track, right? Because there's scholarships you can get that don't require the financial aid or the FAFSA, and there's they might require you to know at the end. So you need to just kind of know where we are in that. So I would just say, just stay alerted and continue to communicate with us in that process. Great question. The next question is, will this process improve the lag time between the financial aid award and the student account office to ensure the deadline date for student accounts bill to be paid is accurate and reflects the amount due? So they're talking about a nuance in this process. Will it improve the lag that was between the financial aid award as well as the their student account?
Well, I'll go into a little bit more. I'll go into a little bit depth to answer that question. I would say traditionally, yes, but because of the new FAFSA rollout for 24-25 and the FAFSA simplification, this upcoming year will be an anomaly, meaning that again, traditionally, FAFSAs will be available October 1st of the previous year in preparation for the upcoming academic year. Whereas for 24-25, FAFSAs won't be available for the colleges to begin to review until February. So just from a timeline perspective, you really won't be, it really won't answer that question. It really, I would say, from a timeline perspective, it won't help. And this will be every college in the country. There will be some lag time between colleges receiving the FAFSA, determining eligibility, and when fees will be due for the upcoming academic year. Every college will be in this weird space for the 24-25 academic year. And this is something that I am asking to this community to really, number one, be patient and be understanding that this is not a Morehouse issue. It is really every college across the country and what we are experiencing with this new FAFSA simplification rollout and how it's impacting colleges across the country in terms of tuition and fees, deadlines, things of that nature for the upcoming academic year.
And I definitely want to point out, there's support mechanisms, right, in play as well with the institution and how we communicate with our students, with our parents, with our constituents and those involved, and how important it is to stay in contact and connect with us. When we reach out to the student, we're trying to speak to the student. So I know Dr. Primus' office, the way they work is very direct. And what you all don't know is there's a chat between our departments where we communicate between us. So, I try to be as transparent as possible.
Right.
That's what we want. That's what we want. So the next question, will the college automatically receive the FAFSA information, or will the student have to send the information to their admitted college? So how is that FAFSA then retrieved?
So within the FAFSA, the student has, I think, 30 or 40 different schools that they can select on the FAFSA to where they want their FAFSA information to be sent to. So when you complete the in completing the FAFSA, you can select, up to 30 or 40 different schools. So in mid-February, that FAFSA application information will be sent to all of the schools that you've identified on the FAFSA. That is very important, though, because I want to add a caveat to this. What happens if you put 40 different schools and you don't attend either one of those schools. That means that the school that you choose to go to that's not on your list won't receive your FAFSA information. So that means that you'll have to go back onto your FAFSA, add that college, and then resubmit, which will create a slower processing time. So please, families, just make sure that you're having these conversations and adding all possible options for colleges so that in the event that a decision is made for what college, and we hope that you're coming to Morehouse, that Morehouse is on your FAFSA. And so I'll do a plug here. Morehouse College's school code is 001582.
I'll write it down. Make sure y'all write that down. One more time, Doc.
001582.
Very important. I'm sure that's not changing.
That's not changing.
That's not changing. Which tax year is pulled from 2024, 2025? Does salary determine how much aid is approved?
So we always use Department of Education use what we call prior year tax information. So that's tax information from 2 years ago. And they moved to that type of reporting requirement because the Department of Education found that there was some very big inaccuracies with tax information for the previous year because families were still doing amended taxes. There were a lot of changes in determining eligibility. So they found that pulling information from 2 years prior, where families should have solidified their tax or their financial standing, would have been is the best, if you will, the best measurement of determining eligibility. And what was the second part to that question?
Yep. And that second part was how much aid, like does salary determine how much aid is approved?
Well, it's not all salary. In that salary requirement, those thresholds vary because families make, different, they're in different tax brackets, if you will. So it's not necessarily all salary. It plays your financial information plays an important role, but that's not the primary or that's not the only factor. Some of it is the number of people in your household. Some of it is the number of individuals that's in college. Some of it is the area or the geographic location, zip code. What's the poverty level, if you will, for your specific state for the out-of-state parents. So there's several different factors that the Department of Education has changed to make sure that we are applying federal student aid in a more equitable manner as opposed to the more of a cookie cutter process that they've used in the past for determining eligibility. And the reason why I say that is because in the past, the Department of Education used just a standard threshold for Pell Grant. That means that if you have an adjusted gross income of $36,000 or less, then you are eligible for Pell Grant. But that doesn't necessarily mean, for this upcoming FAFSA that the 36,000 means that you're eligible for Pell, because my 36,000 in Georgia is different from 36,000 in California. So how the Department of Education determines need is different from state to state now, as opposed to just a unified threshold of a certain dollar amount for determining eligibility.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You talked about SAP tonight. It's the SAP PACE criteria cumulative as well, and I think you answered this already.
It's cumulative as well.
And so is it per semester?
We evaluate.
It's cumulative.
Right, it's cumulative, right? So it's cumulative across the board. So your semester grades and your semester completion rate, all of that is evaluated at the end of each semester, but it's evaluated at the end of each semester. But then for your financial aid status, we're looking at where are you cumulatively to make sure that you're meeting those.
That's the key. That's the key, because you might do well one term, but they're gonna look at that overall.
They're gonna look at the overall. Parents
so
looking at overall.
Yeah. We'll plug in FERPA later. Once accepted, can you apply for internal scholarships, or does the FAFSA need to be completed first? Again, once accepted, you can by all means apply for internal scholarships. I would say before you're accepted, you need to kind of have an indication of what are the scholarships Morehouse has, right? So it's really you plugging in and making sure you're well aware. Does the FAFSA need to be completed first, Doc? I'll let you answer that one.
So I would say that again.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would say, I would highly encourage to complete the FAFSA as soon as possible. Again, you don't want to miss out on any, not only federal aid eligibility, but then also, some institutional aid. So I would just highly recommend that, even if you're not eligible for federal aid, you're still putting yourself in consideration for institutional scholarships and awards. So I would say just get it completed as soon as possible.
Absolutely. When is the due date for the FAFSA? Very good.
I would say, well, from a regulatory perspective, and I'm talking just from the Department of Education's perspective, there is no deadline date. However, the sooner the better. The sooner the better in terms of now, you remember I mentioned to you earlier, with this FAFSA 24-25 FAFSA simplification soft launch, we're running into, or the Department of Education is running into what they call, some glitches in the system because we're doing a complete revamp. So trying to get it done as soon as possible would help you kind of navigate through to make sure that you get it completed as soon as possible, because there will be some lag time from when the colleges receive that information to communicating to you about next steps, to receiving your financial aid award, to seeing, if you owe anything or if your financial aid is enough to cover, or if they are required, or if you guys need to go in a different direction. So the sooner you get this done or get the FAFSA submitted, that's at least you're ahead. Waiting until the last minute will not yield the results that you're looking for, specifically with a lot of the unknowns that we're running up against with this new FAFSA rollout. So there are some uncertainties. And again, this is not just from a Morehouse perspective. This is from colleges across the country that participate in federal student aid programs. I'm sure they are encouraging their students to get the FAFSA done or to be diligent to get it completed and submitted as soon as possible.
Got it. In this session tonight, we are going to go over some. So families, thank you for being on. We want to go over because we want to get your questions, and please continue to put them in the chat. I think Doc has the gift of being able to answer everything. So don't hold back. But that's excellent. Doc, this is great information. As the questions still continue to run in, do you receive a choice to select subsidized or unsub, right? That choice, that decision, right? Or do you receive both options? Like, do you get one or the other, or do you get both?
So for subsidized and unsubsidized, subsidized is based upon need. So based upon the information that you complete on the FAFSA and the income information, all of these different factors, a student may be eligible or ineligible for subsidized loans, because based upon the Department of Education's calculations, if you have need, then you'll be eligible for subsidized. If it's been determined that you are not eligible for need, then you'll be eligible for unsub only. So and that's on a case by case, depending on what's been submitted on the FAFSA. But I've seen most of the students that come to Morehouse, they're eligible for sub and unsub in tandem.
Great question. Do both parents have to consent and complete the FAFSA? And so that's the first question. And student's biological maternal parent is married. Is the step parent tax info required to be submitted onto the FAFSA? Is the paternal parent tax info also required? So it's asking.
That's a lot. So let's break.
Yeah, it is.
What's the first
No, someone loaded us, man. So the first one is, do both parents have to consent and complete the FAFSA?
Okay, so to answer that question, it really depends on the marital status of the family. Okay. So if the parents are married, then yes, because again, they're having to pull that information, and they have to consent to pull that tax information onto the student's FAFSA.
Got it. And so they're asking that, and so that makes sense. It's about marital status, and I can tell that's getting there.
Yep. And tax filing status.
And tax filing status. Okay, so it's both. Okay, and then the question of the step parent, right? So if there's a situation where a step parent is involved, what is required there?
Okay, so for the step parent, the Department of Education is requiring that the step parent's information be included as well
Right.
because they're in the household.
Right. So the generalization of it is, should each parent apply for FSA ID number for FAFSA access, or just one parent and the student? Does it matter?
I think that in that situation, I think it again is case by case, particularly on the parent. The student has to complete one regardless. And so for the parent side, you're right. And so for the parent side, I don't think it's necessary for both parents to complete the FSA ID. I think it's necessary for one parent to do it, because if the parent is married, and if they file filing joint, they're just pulling the same information for both parents because they file married filing joint. And so there's only one data set of information that's going to be transferred over.
Got it. Man, great questions tonight. So a couple things, a couple questions I had, which is coming up. You talked about the verification,
Sure.
KIA verification, and a lot of people, I don't know, sometimes that lags. If they talk about lag, but that's the part where you don't always get that information, and it holds them up in this sort of holding spot, because you're waiting for the government for them to be able to do the verification pieces, right? So what are some of the things in terms of in the past where people had to submit to complete verification, right?
So one of the key things is just tax information. And that's where, again, I think I mentioned earlier, for the parents and the student, for the parents to consent to transfer their tax information onto the FAFSA, that eliminates that, auto selection, if you will, to submit your tax information. Because again, the Department of Education is using the IRS as a source of, hey, this is accurate based upon, what's been submitted. However, if you choose not to, then, the student becomes ineligible, but then it'll still come through. But then if the student is selected for verification, then that means that we're going to require for the parents to submit tax return transcripts, and then that's a processing time that's probably between 7 to 10 business days. And that 7 to 10 business day time frame doesn't start until all documents have been uploaded and received.
Gotcha.
So there's a lag time between when we notify you that you've been selected. There may be a day or two before the student checks to see what their missing requirements are. There may be another day or two for receiving the actual tax information to be uploaded, and then it starts to review. That doesn't necessarily mean that once we review it that everything is going to go through. Amongst our reviews, we found that, hey, you may be missing a page on your 1040 tax forms. We have to reject that submission and then require for you to upload the correct document, and then that further slows down the process. So again, I just think it's very important that just transfer the information. You don't want to go through that lengthy time frame of being selected for verification and what that looks like in terms of slowing down the process.
Makes perfect sense. Excellent. What timeline, right, determines the first come, first served basis for gap funding?
Well, I think so. Again, that's really based upon case by case. I can't really put a time frame on it because it's really dependent on the budget that we have and who comes to us or who comes to the Office of Admissions, because we really work in tandem in terms of students that come to us in need. And again, we meet the requirements for determining gap funding based upon, all of the aid has been applied to the student account. The student has accepted their loans. Caveat to this, have accepted their loans, because I have parents to say, well, I don't want my son to, accrue any debt. What can Morehouse do? We want to just make sure that there's an equal investment in ensuring that students are, serious about college and matriculating. So we want to make sure that, all other options have been exhausted, and it really just depends on what we have left in the budget. I would yield to say during the latter part of the academic year, funds they become scarce because we are meeting the tuition and fee deadlines. And so the students who wait until the last minute to do the FAFSA, but then come to us and say, well, I'm waiting on my FAFSA to come through. Fee payment deadline is tomorrow. What can you do? my response will be, I would love to help you, but we can't because you haven't done your part as a student and as a family to ensure that you're meeting us at least halfway to meet those financial obligations. Hopefully
No,
that
that's
answers the question.
no, that last part that is critical. Because it's all about what we have, but it's also about what is it that your son is doing to make
Sure,
sure he stays on, right? Because you're talking about the communication that's going to go in between. Speaking of
absolutely.
son, it says my son has his own t-shirt business. Pretty dope. It says and makes a decent amount of money for that. Does he need to report that income as part of the FAFSA?
If he filed taxes.
We'll leave that
So
alone.
I'm not a tax preparer, but I would say if he made money that is
Yeah,
required per the federal tax code to file taxes, he needs to
yeah,
file taxes.
yeah. So let's, we want to stay according. We want to do right. Okay.
Correct.
Y'all trying to do right around here. But that's awesome about your son. Shoot, he might not
Awesome.
need a scholarship. He can pay his
Absolutely.
own way, right? I'm just like, so there's a question. Expecting the delay in the award letter, will the bill due date for Morehouse that is usually due will it be extended in July?
Well,
So
I
there's a
think that'll
question
be
about the
right.
bill and the awards.
Correct. And I think that, I would say for that particular family and really for everyone, that's in the room to be looking forward to all communications coming from Morehouse as it relates to fee payment dates and deadlines. I'll tell you that this is a very fluid process because of this new FAFSA simplification. We are working through it day by day as we receive information, the college receives information, and so we'll be making some more firm decisions on what the future actions of the institution will be in forthcoming communications.
Awesome. We'll take these last two questions before we conclude. The question is, when does the FAFSA have to be completed in order to receive financial aid packaging and still attend fall 2024? Good
So
question. And then how
again,
many times do you guys amend the award letters?
So what I'll say here is again, and I think I mentioned this previously, try to get your FAFSA in as soon as possible. Again, this is an anomaly year where this FAFSA simplification rollout is creating a lot of uncertainty for colleges. So being late is not, or being, oh, we forgot. This should be a priority at this particular point. At this juncture, January 9th, 2024, this should be a priority to get the FAFSA completed and submitted. Again, because if you look at the timeline, or if you just kind of think about the timeline, you may complete it today, but Morehouse may not be able to bring it in until mid-February. You're about to lose a month. So in terms of a timeline, that's just us receiving the FAFSA. That's not if you're selected for verification. That's not, if any additional documentation is needed. So there's a timeline here that we're under that may be in a little bit of a crunch as we move into the August 2024. And so when students can actually complete the FAFSA as many times as they want, I highly recommend you all not complete the FAFSA 20 times. I've had families complete or submit FAFSAs 18 different times. That's the highest I've ever seen it. But just to see if they're going to get a different award, and it doesn't work that way. My suggestion would be really take the time to do it right the first time. And mistakes happen, but between once or twice, I think that you should be able to get a accurate, fair financial aid award assessment.
Awesome. These questions are great. And I think that was actually our last one before we wrap up. The IRS data retrieval tool. My question.
Sure.
Still the case? Will they still have that process in play?
Well,
or is that something that's on?
Well, they've changed. The name is no longer the IRS data retrieval tool. It's the data exchange transfer.
Got you. Okay.
But it's still the same functionality in terms of confirming with the IRS, logging in, transferring your information from one IRS source into your FAFSA. So the process and the functionality is still the same.
This is great. It's great. I hope you all got a lot of information. As we wrap up this amazing session, just give Dr. Primus a big hand. Doc, we clap for you, man. This is phenomenal, sir.
Thank you.
So I know people are going to want to contact you, contact your office. And so we have this amazing slide here where you can get in contact with the amazing Office of Financial Aid to talk about scholarships, student accounts, and really under Dr. Primus' leadership, financial aid, in my perspective, Doc, has turned around tremendously just with you being here and the work that you've done to ensure that our parents and students have what they need and are able to engage and connect. Thank you for partnering with the Office of Strategic Marketing, Communications, and Admissions as we, do what we know to do in this way. So I will leave my remarks and then you can conclude with yours. Families, as we think about, Morehouse, as you think about, the scholarships, as you think about the decisions that you're making right now, please adhere to everything that Dr. Primus has mentioned tonight. You all have gotten a lot of information. You need to take a pen and paper, and I hope you wrote these things down because this was a plethora of knowledge that was just given to you by one of our leaders at the college. And so, I want you all to just stay steadfast, honest, and true. Work as hard as you can as you complete your application, as you continue to work hard through these processes, and just stick with us as we do that. Dr. Primus.
Yep, I echo Mr. Gum, and definitely thank you all for giving me the opportunity and the platform to share this information with you all. I hope that it was a wealth of knowledge and information. Our offices are available to help you and assist you with navigating through this process. Again, please be patient with us. This is a new process. This is a new experience for, again, all colleges across the country that participate in federal student aid programs. So we're all in this together. We are all in the same boat at the same time, in the same position in terms of trying to assist and provide information to students and families. And so I definitely appreciate you all taking the time out of your schedules to really listen to the information that's being presented, and contact us if you have any follow-up questions.
Thank you all so much.